Hi, I want to talk to you today about forgiveness. We're moving into that time of the year where we're getting into this festive time of the year. Everyone's excited. We're getting ready for Thanksgiving. Then we're getting ready for Christmas. And I noticed that because Thanksgiving is our holiday for where we stand in gratitude and we're thinking about all the things we're grateful for, we seem to be running right out of Halloween and right into Christmas, and Thanksgiving just seems to be something that's in between. But I want you to stop and think about Thanksgiving, and while you're standing around the table and saying your prayer and being grateful for your family being all there with you, being grateful for the day, however you celebrate the day, I want you that while you're in your gratitude to go into your forgiveness and make it a practice of adding forgiveness to that ritual of gratitude, forgiving all those that you have trespassed against and all those that have trespassed against you. It's very important. I am learning that as I move into a new 7-year cycle, I asked myself, what did I want this next 7 years to be about? And I had a resounding forgiveness. And I thought, my goodness, forgiveness? I've been in forgiveness for the last 30 years. I've had to forgive the past of my life, forgive the people, places, and things, parents and siblings and significant others and relationships that have gone sour, family relationships, children, just all manner of people that I had to forgive. And I thought, after 30 years of that, am I not there yet? But you know what? No, we're not. Because the character assassination that you may have been subjected to is still going on. You may not even be aware of it. So it's a real good idea to say, I forgive all those that have trespassed against me, known or unknown. Because let me tell you, when you've been the subject of a character assassination, there's no telling how deep that rabbit hole goes. Because one of the things we do is set up stories to defend our position, do we not? When we're angry with someone and we're looking through the eyes of perception and we have decided that they have wronged us and created a lot of pain and anger and misery, then what do? We assassinate them with everybody that we know. Why? Because we don't want to be out there on that limb by ourselves. We don't want to give the people that are in our lives the attitude of, or the idea that, you know what, is she stubborn? Is he stubborn? Is he living in the past? Can he not let go? Is he being very petty? We don't want those things to cross their minds. So we make up these stories to justify the character of assassination of someone that we're upset with. And we malign their character to everyone. So when we're doing our forgiveness, we need to include that known and unknown, because we have no idea what's been done. And unfortunately, we all do this, do we not? We make up these stories because we just don't want to face our part in what happened. We don't want to take on any kind of blame. You know, the ego is set up that way. It looks outside of itself. It doesn't look within itself. And the mystic Jesus said that to us when he said, in one passage in the Bible, he says, before you worry about and take out the rafter in your brother's eye, the splinter in your brother's eye, take out the rafter in yours. And what did he mean by that? He meant that you're looking at your brother through your own eye of perception, and you've got a rafter there. You perceive them to be a certain way, and you are relating to them and in a relationship with them or discussing them based on your perception, which more often than not is in error. Many, many, many times when I'm working with my clients and they come to me and they've got issues with their parents, be it the mother or the father or a sibling or something, and we start to work through the issue, and I say, go back to the beginning of the issue, and oh my goodness, they're looking through the eyes of a 5-year-old. Or they had a real bad blow up with their mother when they were a teenager, 15 years old, and the mother gets frozen there. And the mother comes off as being unreasonable and rigid and all manner of things. And this child moving forward, my client, cannot get past the image that was frozen of their mother or their father or that sibling. They just can't get past it. And it clouds the relationship. And then the character assassination starts. Because in order to justify the way they feel about that parent or the way they feel about that sibling or that spouse, and when they want to elicit support. So now here's the character assassination as they tell everyone that they have any kind of influence with to get them on their side, to get them to agree with them, to not look at them as being unreasonable or unfair. And so this is where all of this starts. And so we have so many people that we need to forgive us because of the things that we've done, the character assassination that we have participated in to justify our own individual position. And as I said, we're set up that way. The ego is set up to look outside of itself. It does not see its own flaws. And that is also the reason why sometimes your flaws are mirrored back to you. You have someone come into your life that is rigid, or someone that comes into your life that is petty, to show you your own pettiness so that you can then be able to see it and work with it and release it. So we need forgiveness if we're going to move forward. Forgiveness is the key that opens up the heart to compassion and to love and to wisdom. All those things reside in the heart. And you have to use forgiveness to unlock the heart, because a heart that is full of resentment and anger and past judgments is not a heart that can be loving. You know, when you study the ancient Egyptian wisdom, one of the things that they used to do, and when they would say when you came through the halls of Amenti, the halls of judgment, the ancient Egyptians, and I'm not talking about the Egyptians of today. When I say ancient Egyptian religion, I am talking all the way back thousands of years to the days of Thoth in the Emerald Tablet. And one of the things that they did when you went through the halls of Amenti and you stood before the seven kings of judgment, they put your heart on one side of the scale and they put a feather on the other side. And if your heart was lighter than the feather, you went on through the gates to the afterlife into your next adventure. And if the heart was heavier than the feather, then you had to go back and cycle back through another incarnation as human. And then so the logic would dictate, because I was probably about 9 or 10 years old when I was reading this, and the logic was well, of course the heart is going to be heavier than a feather. But in reality, the heart is not supposed to be heavier than a feather. The heart is supposed to be full of love and therefore light and of a high vibration. And our hearts are not, because our hearts are full of resentment and anger and an unforgiving nature. So that means if you were to go to the halls of Amenti, yeah, your heart would be heavy and you'd have to go back through another round of incarnations. And this is what happens in events such as that. And so we're being admonished that we need forgiveness, that healing bond. We need to forgive all those people. And so when I was going back and led to go back through the 4 agreements, that not making assumptions and not taking things personally, not making assumptions. Because you see, we all do it. And that, I would suggest to you, is what gets recorded in an event. What gets recorded in an event, in a relationship event, is the assumption that is going on in your brain at the time. Because when you're in the middle of an emotional upset, you're thinking, you're constantly thinking. The person is talking to you and they're saying their side of it, and you're constantly thinking and making assumptions about what they're saying, what they mean. You're not hearing what they say. You're making your assumption. You're busy with your assumptions. And that track is being laid down in your memory. So that when you recall the event later, you remember all of your self-talk, all of your assumptions, not what the person said. I visited my cousin years ago when I first met my cousin in LA, years and years ago. And when you walked in her door, right in the front door, and I don't know about now, I haven't been there in years, but when you walked in Ella's front door, there was a big plaque. And I still remember it to this day because it says, I know you think you understand what you heard me say, but I wonder if you realize that what you heard is not what I said. And we do this all the time. We don't listen because we're busy making assumptions. And we're making assumptions that you say this, but you mean this, you mean this, you mean that, you mean the other. And that is what we catalog and lay down in our memory recall. And that is what we're holding against that person, not what they said, the assumptions that we made at the time. So it's very appropriate when we get into the habit of forgiving, understanding that our recall more often than not is faulty. That is not what happened. That is not what was said. And then we add to it because later on, now we want to get a bunch of people on our side. And we want to get the family on our side. We want to divvy up everybody so everybody takes sides. And so I recall my side. And then I proceed to assassinate the character of my sibling or my child or my parent or my spouse. I proceed to do this by recounting my side of why I feel the way I feel and getting everybody on my side because I don't want to be out there on that limb by myself. And so I assassinate your character and I destroy you in the eyes of everyone who listens to me. You ever walked in a place and everybody was mistreating you or treating you in a negative manner and you couldn't figure out why because you just met these people. You don't know them from Adam's house cat. But you can feel the energy and you can feel that they don't like you or they have a preconceived notion about you. You don't know where it came from. And then sometimes you find out later on down the line what was said about you and it becomes so hurtful. Because you think, wow. I remember I took a marketing class once and I never forgot it. And the marketing guy said, did you know that every person influences the buying decisions of 100 people? So I got to thinking about that. And if you've got 5 people in a family and one of those persons has a problem with you, and that person tells everybody in the family, so now potentially 500 people think you are the worst person on the planet because of the mouth of one person who has assassinated your character. And that is murder. And I look at it that way. And I say, when they talk about the 10 Commandments says, thou shalt not kill, I think they need to include character assassination. Because the damage that you can do to a person just by telling one story not quite right is murder. They'll never recover. More often than not, they don't even know that you've destroyed them in this way. They don't know why people don't like them. They don't know where it comes from, but it comes from you. So when you're doing your forgiveness, you have a lot to atone for. Forgive me for those things that I've done against my fellow man. Forgive me my trespasses. My trespasses. You start with you and those that trespass against me. But you've done your fair share and you've assassinated a lot of characters in the name of I don't want to be wrong. And I noticed 20 some odd 30 years ago when I decided that that was going to be my premise, that it was not important anymore for me to be right. And so when you decide that you can be wrong and you can be comfortable being wrong and you don't have to be right, you know what you stop doing? You stop defending bad behavior. And you stop defending your position because you can now acknowledge, I may not be recalling that incident the way it actually happened. And so when you're looking at the agreement of assumption, you start to think to yourself, and I admonish people all the time, if you didn't hear it, if you were not within earshot of the conversation, and if you were not privy to the event, and that means there when it happened and saw it with your own eyes, then when the event is recalled to you, you need to be non-committal and don't pass it on. Because to do so is to defame that person's character and to perpetuate what might just be an untruth. So it's easier. You can nod your head, you can nod whatever you want, but refuse to pass it on. And very often than not, it's also hard to look at somebody that you have destroyed because they may not know it, but you do, right? They come around you and you look in their eyes or you look in their face, and it all comes to mind, all of the ugly things that you have said about them behind their back. And then you worry, right? You worry, how much do they know? Do have they been talking to somebody? Do they know? Because that's the other reason that you murder their character, because you want to murder and destroy their character so badly that if they were to talk to somebody else in a family or in an office or anything, your reputation has been ruined and nobody's going to believe anything that you say because your character has been completely assassinated. So that's the other reason that we do things like that. And I'm sure those of you that have worked in offices, I know I've had it happen to me plenty of times where my character was assassinated, and I was just floored when I was called into the administration and accused of all manner of things by people that I didn't even work with. I didn't even know. And so this happens, and then you're destroyed. Your livelihood is destroyed. Fortunately, I know that God is the source of my supply, and I will never forget. I remember an incident years and years ago when I was working for a law firm in California, and the administrator liked me because I had been there for about 7, 8 months, and secretaries were actually requesting me, can you have her at my desk when I go on vacation? And the administrator just loved it, and it was to the point that a couple of times when she asked for me, I was out on another assignment. So the next time I got back, she said, if I let you go, she said, I may not get you back. So I want you to go to the lunchroom and just sit in the lunchroom because somebody is going to call in off, or they're going to call in sick, or we're going to have a special project. So I said, okay. And the only thing she and I can figure is that I was sitting there waiting for a call in, and it was probably about 9:30. And I was just sitting there. And of course, I was going through a magazine because I was waiting to get an assignment. And as it turns out, she got a call. I did get an assignment, and I went to work a desk that day. And that afternoon, she called me in the office and she said, I've gotten a call from a partner to fire you immediately. And she said, and I don't understand why this partner has a problem with you. And she said, I looked back on every place that I've had you work. You've never worked for him. You've never worked for an associate with him. You've never worked for anything connected with him. And I do not understand why he is insisting that I terminate you and you not be allowed to work here again. And I thought, wow. But as it was, we finally, months back, someone must have said something because she called the agency and she said, I found out what happened. And it was a secretary that had walked into the lunchroom, saw me sitting there thumbing through a paper, went and told her attorney, who told another attorney, who told this partner, who called up, because an assumption was made that I was just sitting there reading a newspaper on the firm's time. Just that fast, just that quick. And the administrator couldn't understand it because there was no way to trace it. It took her months to find out what happened. She could not figure out why this particular partner called her up and demanded that I be terminated that day with no explanation. And she couldn't let it go. It took her months. And she finally told my agency, she called and she said, I finally found out what happened. And she said, and I'm going to remove this do not use. And I've talked to the partner about the misunderstanding. But I then refused to go work for that law firm again. And I never would go back. But it was just how things like that happen. And so I fast forward into my life now, and I look at how damaging that is, these assumptions that we make without getting clarification. We just make these assumptions and we never think about the damage that we are doing. And then when we do, in the quiet of our soul, we start to not retract what we said, but now we can't look that person in the eye. We can't be around that person. And so we keep it going. Oh, I can't talk to her because there's too much pain. She's done too much to me in the past. She's done this to me. She's done that to me. I don't ever want to be around her. Your own guilt, your own shame. Forgiveness will help you move through that. Forgiveness helps you let stuff like that go, where you can start to look at things in proper perspective, and you can start to say to that person silently and quietly, that I forgive you. I forgive you your trespasses against me. You forgive me for my trespasses against you. And all things are cleared up between us. And you may never, ever be in that person's company again. You may never have them in your life again, but you have the satisfaction of knowing that you have released this emotional poison from your body. Now, you may be sitting here saying, why would I bother? Well, let me give you an idea of why you would bother. When I first heard that we have a brand new body every 7 years, all of our organs rejuvenate. Every organ in our body, we have a brand new body, brand new organs every 7 years. The first thought I had was, if we have a new body every 7 years, then why do we age and why do we get sick? And the resounding answer that comes back was emotions. And then they discovered that it takes 5 years for any kind of cancer to manifest outwardly in the body temple, because your body manifests from your thoughts and emotions. So all dis-ease is your own emotional imbalance. So you see, it's poisonous to hold thoughts of envy and jealousy and anger and hate and all manner of negative thought, because it takes up residence in the weakest organ in the body. And then it just moves from there. And then your 7 years comes around and you become a new person. But what has happened is the body self-replicates. So all of that crap that you had in the previous cells, the new cells pick up their pattern from the old cells. And so here comes all of that emotional garbage right with you. And it continues to destroy and break down the body, because again, the body reflects your thoughts, your attitudes, your opinions. And so these are the things that are going on. Speaking your words, speaking your world into existence, all the negative self-talk that you give yourself is manifesting. So this is why you have forgiveness, where you can say, I forgive and I release and I let this go. I give this off to my spirit, my center, my higher self, for purification and dissipation, harming no one and depriving no one, in love and light, so that you can remove it from your own essence. But remembering that it's energy, it's thought, it has a life. You do not want it landing on some unsuspecting person. So you want to clean it up and clear it up. So when you give it to your higher self, it's for dissipation and purification, harming no one and depriving no one, and in love and light. As you move forward and you get these things out of the realm of your own stuff, out of your body temple, and understanding that you may not be right in your recall, because it depends on where your mind was and how the mind recorded the memory. Is it recording what I said, or is it recording your assumptions about what I said? You see, depends on where your emotions are. And if you record assumptions, you will go to your grave swearing that that is what I said to you, and that never came out of my mouth. So when we acknowledge the possibility of being wrong, the possibility that I may not be right about this, I may not be remembering this correctly, this may not be what they said, or Is she really like that now? This was 50 years ago. My goodness, she's a different person now. Maybe I need to take a minute and find out who she is now. How does she think? What does she know? I remember an incident once where someone was talking. I was getting married, and I laughed because my mother was telling my husband at the time. She says, "And if you have any kind of questions at all about her, you ask me because I know her." And I smirked to myself. I smiled, but I smirked to myself, and I said, "You can't possibly know me. If I was to ask you my favorite color right now, you wouldn't know it. But if you knew me, you would, because you see, you have enough conversations with me to know what I think and how I feel, where I am at this moment in time. Maybe 20 years ago, I was very selfish, and that's what you're reacting to, but I'm not that person now. But you are still telling everybody within the sound of your voice that I'm a jerk because I'm selfish. And then they have that opinion of me. Character assassination. You have murdered my character in the eyes of other people. So we must be careful with our assumptions, and we must be careful to recognize that we are making an assumption and it is not necessarily correct. So when we ask our forgiveness, when we move into forgiveness, and we ask that we are forgiven for the trespasses, those things that we have said and done about other people, those character assassinations, those murders that we have committed against the person of another person, then we're asking for all that to be released. Released from our thoughts, released from our mind, released from our body. And I recall a situation about how those assumptions work. I remember that when I first went to see my mother, I was 16. And I still remember what she was doing in the dress she was wearing. And my mother had this cute little blue knit. It was a light blue, medium blue knit, almost royal, a little lighter than royal blue knit dress. And she was washing dishes. And I walked in and I said, "Hey, Mom." And she hadn't seen me since I was probably about 7 years old. And here I was standing here. And she, "Hey, how you doing?" And then she went back to washing dishes. She never said another word to me. And in the meantime, my sisters came in, and so they were all glad to see me and hugging me and things. And I went back to their bedroom while they were getting dressed to do different things. And my sister Tricia and I were close at that time. And I remember that I came every Saturday for weeks and weeks and weeks. And my mother eventually got better. She did get better. She got to the point she would smile when I came in, and she would laugh and talk, and we would say some things, but she was always guarded, always guarded. And I was young. So, but I always read, and I was always studying, and I was always about doing things on my path of evolving. And so on my 21st birthday, I was going to have a big party at the packing house. And I remember I said, "I'm 21 now. I'm going to take my mother to lunch, and I'm going to tell her some things." And so when we got to lunch at the Palmer House that day, I said to her, I took her hand and I said, "First, I want you to understand something. I do not blame you for anything. I am not judging you for anything. And I don't want anything from you because you see, I understand you will never love me like you love your other children. It's not possible. You did not raise me. Okay? And so you need to know that I'm here because you and I need to find a relationship. We need to have our own relationship because you see, I'm an adult now. And I'm not going to go back to all the things that you might have, should have, would have, could have. This is about us finding a relationship right now. I am about to be 21 years of age. So we need to find a relationship, but you need to know no judgment here. No judgment. Know what happened, why didn't you, why come? None of that. Only, and I don't expect anything of you. I want us to find a relationship, you and I. That is our relationship. And my mom cried through most of the lunch and she didn't really respond. And then finally, when she pulled herself together, she said, "Can I cook for your birthday party?" And I said, "Oh, I would love you to." And so she did. And she put her foot in it. And The wonderful thing that she gave me that defined our relationship is my mom, everybody calls her by her first name. And if you try to call her mom or grandmom or anything like that, she'll say, oh, no, baby, call me her first name. And so, but for me, I always called her mom. And how she defined our relationship and separated it out was that I am allowed to call her mom. She has never, ever corrected me. Even when we'd be out on the town and we'd be on the dance floor and we'd be dancing and wiggling and going on, and I'd say, Mom, such and such a thing, and she'd laugh and answer me. That was her gift to me, to allow our relationship to be set aside where I called her mom, where all of her other children called her by her first name, at her request. Let me put that in there. This is not about disrespect. This was her request. Oh no, baby, calm, And this was her, but she allowed me. That was her way of allowing us to have our own unique relationship, and we still do. But she had to know that I didn't have any assumptions about her. I was not judging her. I had been there every week to get to know her. I didn't come in with preconceived notions about who she was. I had heard a lot of ugly stuff about her. A lot of things people had said about her because of their jealousy of her. A lot of people had assassinated her character. But I was not, my dad's standpoint was get to know her. My dad always said, get to know somebody. So when I showed up at my 16th birthday, I was there to get to know her. And I spent weeks from the time I was 16 till the time I was 21, almost every weekend with my mother, getting to know her. Getting to know her, myself, not with anybody else's preconceived notions and not without all that crap in the back of my head about who my mother was. And I'm so grateful, so thankful that I did it that way. Because my relationship with my mother is a relationship that we built now. I'm not going to say we have not had our ups and downs because we have. We're two different people. That's to be expected. But not in judgment. And I've never pointed a finger at her and called her anything other than she is my mom. And she is, and she will forever be. So I didn't allow other people to define her for me. I got to know her myself. And so I understood a lot in listening to her because, of course, she started to relax. Once she knew I wasn't there to judge, she started to relax and she gradually started to tell me things. Just things that she wanted to tell me, not questions that I asked. And in the things that she was explaining, I started to see a composite. I started to understand why she made the decisions that she made and why she did some of the things that she did. And because I had made no assumptions and no preconceived opinions of her, I could see her through the eyes of love and in compassion and wisdom and true understanding of who she is. And I've been able to accept that and not be in the mishmash that my family has from time to time. And so this is why it's so important. And forgiveness was key. Forgiveness. Being able to let something go. Let the past go. Your eternity is right now. And tomorrow will take care of itself, but it's based on the opinions and decisions that you make in your eternal now moment, which is right now. And the past is yesterday. And you cannot take back one story that you have told. You cannot take back the character assassination that you have done to people. There is nothing you can do to erase whatever ugliness and bitterness that you have put out there. Whatever destruction that you have been the generator of, you can't take any of it back. You cannot take back one thing you've said or one thing you've done. So you use forgiveness and you move forward. And you try not to do it again. You try to remember you don't have all the pieces sometimes. So before you open up your mouth, think. I do remember a poem that I read a long time ago that they were talking about gossip. I was only probably about 12, 11 or 12 years old when I read it. And I don't remember the author or all of the stanzas, except it talked about how it sends people to cry at their pillow at night. It destroys relationships. It puts all manner of disagreement between people. It causes all manner of destruction. Its name even hisses like a snake. It is called gossip. And that's how we communicate these days. We've become a nation of gossipers that take gossip as conversation. And so as the Four Agreements points out, getting to the point that you no longer live by you no longer live by taking things personally. You no longer use this as the basis for your living. You no longer live making assumptions about people. Then that's a very difficult thing to do. When you make that decision to do that, it is going to be hard, but it is a decision worth making. And you start on that path by forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving the other people in your life, allowing them to forgive you, and making that commitment that you're not going to assassinate the character of people anymore. And that you're going to let things go. Even if somebody addresses you and says, well, you remember you used to say this about this person, begin by saying, I could have been wrong. They may not be like that now. I was looking at them through the eyes of the past. And they may not be that way anymore. But I may be in a place that I'll never find out, because until I can let go of the past, I certainly can't bring them into my now. But that's a good way to start, is to start to own up to the fact that you may have been entirely wrong. And you've destroyed a person for no other reason other than self-protection. That's why we do anything. We don't want people to know we're being petty. We don't want people to know that we're wrong. We have a hard time admitting that we're wrong all on our own. And so we create these stories for protection. So forgiveness helps you let go of those stories. So as you move into Thanksgiving, and as I finish this little piece here, I bless you and I release you and I set you free. And I also ask you that when you're standing around the table this Thanksgiving, and you are blessed to have your family and those friends and things around you, that you bow your head and you silently forgive all those that you have trespassed against, known or unknown, name or unnamed, and that those that have trespassed against you, forgive and release you, and you forgive and release them. Say that silent prayer, not only for Thanksgiving, adding to your gratitude, but begin right now to start to release and relieve all of those emotional traps that you have in your body temple right at this moment. Letting go of the past, bury it, let it go, and then start to forgive moving forward. If you have an opportunity to read the Four Agreements, I highly recommend it. If you have an opportunity to start putting it in practice, then hello, because if a lot of us were to do this, we would soon change this very interesting world of ours into something a little bit more to our liking. So I leave you with, don't take anything personally. It very rarely is. People are coming at you from their own perspective. They are judging you based on their own ideas, their own perspective. Always, always, always. And when they treat you a certain way, it says more about them than it ever will say about you. And don't make assumptions. If you really want to know, ask. If you don't have the courage to ask, then have the courtesy not to spread the story. Namaste. And happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays. Bye.